tonight, and we couldn't have asked for any better weather for this event, so we've got off to a great start here. Myself and Brian, with the help of Jason, have just got this fire going and done a little bit of the lighting and a little bit of admin to get this all set up for you. And I can hear Mark's vehicle. He's not far from us, so I hope you enjoyed the last half hour of drive with Mark. I'm not sure what you guys did see, so I'll wait for him to get you and let me know. But welcome to the campfire, folks, and what's important for you to realize is that this is a great opportunity for us to answer some of your questions that we may not get to while we're out on drive, and please try and get those questions through to us at hashtag Safari Live on Twitter and questions@wildearth.tv on email. Now, another nice thing about these fireside chats is that we don't necessarily need to answer questions that are relative to what we're looking at, which is what we try and focus on doing when we are out on drive. So when we're in a sighting of buffalo, we try to answer questions that are buffalo related, whereas here we could be answering questions about anything that you may be interested in, about our lives, about our histories, exciting stories. So get those questions through to us, and myself and Mark will do our best job at answering them for you. I'm not sure what many of your plans are for this evening. We don't really have much of a plan, considering it is New Year's Eve, other than this. We may have one or two drinks a bit later, but being out in remote locations like this, there's not too many people to meet up with, and often if there are people around, they're great distances away. So we don't have any plans for later this evening, but I'm sure some of you may well have plans, and if not, and you're just taking it easy, well, there's nothing wrong with that either. You may be able to hear Mark's vehicle. He's just approaching now with VM. And look forward to getting things underway here, folks. Myself and Brian found another hornbill nest on our way here. So the hornbill nest quest continues. We've now got 3 nests, 2 of which are red-billed hornbills, and one of which is the one that we found this afternoon that Brian managed to show you guys so beautifully, the hornbill rolling in. Good evening, Mark. Welcome. Welcome.
Hello, Scott.
How are you doing? Jason, could you do me a big favor, please, and just turn off the audio on the Game Drive channel?
Do we want one of these on?
So, Mark, how was your last half an hour?
Well, it wasn't only the last half hour, Scott, it was the whole afternoon.
Exactly, but I got a few updates on your afternoon as we went along, but the last half an hour, I'm not sure of what happened.
It was just a really peaceful afternoon. We sort of ventured onto Arethusa, and I got to see some roads and trees and drainage lines, and it was pretty awesome.
Good.
Yeah, it was a pensive time. It was a nice time to be introspective and to think about today and put it away, I suppose, because it has to be, you know, it's one of those things.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. How was your afternoon?
It was good. We started off looking for Karula. There was a lot of game viewers that came into that area, so we moved out and let them snoop around, and didn't share any updates of them finding any signs of her. And then when we went back later, once everyone had moved out of that area, we did find her tracks heading along Mvubu Road, but snooped around that area and didn't come up with anything. So she did head closer towards the lodge from where she last was.
One of her areas that she used to go when she left Gowrie Dam would be to go up Mvubu Road, and I think it's called Tambuti Pan, just on the other side of Buffels of Cutline.
Okay.
There were so many times when she left
Gowrie.
No, her boys, Mishun and Duna.
Okay.
When she left them there, and there was a lot of times that drainage line from that little Tambuti Dam that comes down and it runs over Buffels or Cutline, that's the same drainage line that runs into Gowrie Dam. So on that crossing where Buffels or Cutline is, there's a beautiful spot there where we spend a lot of time with those boys.
Okay.
On kills. And might I add, there was the first time I found a hypoxis flower here. It's a beautiful yellow flower.
Okay.
Wild potato.
Good. These are all such important stories, folks, that Marc and I do discuss as much as we can, especially with Marc's knowledge and experience of this specific area, and especially of also Karula as an individual leopard and areas where she likes to move. So having somebody like Marc here who spent time here in the past and has a wealth of experience of this area is so useful for me, because he gives me that kind of information of where she could be. And it's just like that the other day that I found a leopard in an area that you said that they spent a lot of time there, and we went there from your insights, and boom.
I think she is a creature of habit. I think that's probably one of her qualities. I don't know, it's just something that leopards actually do, is that she's had so many successful litters that she has raised in pretty much the same area, that she knows the area well enough. And I think it was just a really freak thing that happened. I mean, I know I'm going back to it, and I shouldn't. But there are a lot of things that subsequent litters of cubs have done over the years, and using that drainage line all the way up to Buffels of Cut line, using that drainage line that you're talking about now, that's at Philemon's Dip at the pump house, same thing. It's just an area they always do. Sorry, I'm going to distract you because you're going to think, oh, I've pulled a plant out. Marc, who loves plants, this is an alien. And while I love plants, this alien shouldn't exist here. It's a blackjack. It's got these heads of seeds that get into everything. They stick to your clothes and your socks. Like the zinnias, they don't belong, and they take up place where there should be plants that are feeding the animals and not poisoning them. And that's not poison. It's just a noxious weed. So I did my weeding for the day.
Well done, Marc. Well done. Getting your fix of gardening for the day.
I should pull out the zinnias too while I'm at it.
Alex, can you hear me in control? Sorry, I'm just double checking. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Alex is on the other end, which is good. I was just making sure that Jason didn't turn down the wrong audio knob. There's two different channels that we listen to when we're out on drive, and one is directly to the final control, which is mainly to Alex, who's directing, and the other channel that we have is the game drive channel. So the game drive channel was just going on in my ear, and we didn't need to hear what the game drives were up to now, so I asked Jason to kindly turn it off for me, and I was just double checking that we still had comms with Alex, and we do. And Alex, we are ready for any questions that you may have, so send them through.
This from the broken sickle bush back there. Must be hard to find wood that's not wet at the moment.
Okay, well, Marc, we've just got a question through from Pam. Good evening, Pam, and welcome to the Fireside. Pam is asking for us to elaborate and let her know on any stories of owls or owls that we may find in this area.
It's sort of a wide-ranging question.
It is a perfect question. We
can
work it from any angle.
I'll take one of the biggest, and I'll say, yeah, we got the giant eagle owl.
Okay.
And where's Pam from? Do we know where Pam's from?
I'm not sure where Pam is from.
Pam, I don't know where you're from, but what I've learned recently about the giant eagle, UK.
Yeah.
I don't know what owls there are in the. I know one owl that, of course, is worldwide is the barn owl. It's probably one of the most widely distributed owls, because the barn owl is found in almost every continent. But our giant eagle owl is, I've learned recently, actually bigger than the great horned owl of the North Americas.
Okay.
But there is a European horned owl, great horned owl, or giant horned owl, I think. And if anyone is sort of on the European continent, anyway, Sweden or any of those countries where you have your horned owls in Europe, what is the size difference to our? And I can think of a couple of people offhand in Finland and the Netherlands. 2 people in Finland and then two people in the Netherlands who are birders, who would probably send us an answer, and some people in England. It's interesting, the owls, because you've got such a wide variety of owls, from the big ones like the eagle owls, but the tiny little pearl-spotted Scots owls that are grasshopper hunters, and diurnal owls. Everybody thinks that owls are nocturnal, but there are actually a number of diurnal owls that are quite active during the day.
Yeah.
and they often prey on small birds. So you always get especially, or rather more so with the smaller owls, you'll get young birds, or rather small birds, not young, but the smaller birds mobbing them as opposed to the bigger owls that, well, they get the drongos and they get a little bit more attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just yesterday, Pam, myself and Brian were out on drive. Sorry, no, VM, I beg your pardon. VM were out on drive yesterday afternoon, and we were driving along a road and we heard some birds alarm calling quite frantically, a lot of starlings. So we stopped to have a look at what they were alarm calling at, and it could have been any predator. I assumed it was a snake because there'd been a lot of rain and I was hoping to find a snake slithering around. But as I got out the vehicle to check for a potential snake, this owl flew out the tree, and it flew out so quickly that it was hard to get a positive idea on it. But it could have been a marsh owl or a grass owl, a medium-sized owl for this area. But like Mark says, we do have a beautiful variety of owls here, ranging from a massive giant eagle owl, or also known as a Verreaux's eagle owl, to the tiny little pearl-spotted or barred owlets. So we do get many here, but sadly, Mark, I don't know why we haven't had much luck in seeing them. Sometimes you do find them
especially the
during day.
jackleberries. There's that big jackleberry on Gary Cutline.
Yeah.
There's those big jackleberries down at Twin Dams. They often have owls in. Yeah, I guess it's just one of the things we've got to. But there's that one owl we see on the way home every night.
Yes.
The giant eagle owl that we have, that seems to sit on the same part of the road every night when we're on our way home. But yeah, we need to maybe find some more owls.
Maybe 2015 will bring more owls, Pam, and we'll be able to showcase the different owls that you get here. But thanks very much for that question, Pam. And sadly, like I say, there are many different species here, about probably 6 or 7 off the top of my head that we might be able to find here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if we go through them, we've got the giant eagle owl, the spotted eagle owl are the two large species of owl. The barred owl, the scops and the pearl spotted, and the white-faced.
So that's 7.
And if you're lucky and you live on one of the big rivers like the Olifants River up in the north of Timbavati, up there Olifants Way, and Baluli, and well, the Olifants River is a fairly large river. Any of the large rivers actually in Africa, you've been very, very lucky to find the Pell's fishing owl. It's a unique owl. I mean, it's got specially adapted pads for catching fish, and all it really does is live on big rivers and catch fish.
I've only seen one of those owls, the Pell's fishing owl.
Myself.
Yeah, very special birds though to see.
Funny how it was like one of those lessons in life where you go hunting for something and you can't find it because you're hunting for it, and the more you want to find it, the less chance you have of finding it. It's like what happens to us when we go looking for leopards sometimes.
Exactly.
Because everybody, yeah, never mind. But it's one of those fables of life, I suppose. When the more you want to see something, the more you want to find it, the harder it is to find it, or the more evasive or elusive it becomes. Until one day you're just sitting at home and there it is. And that's what happened to me with the Pels and Okavango.
Really?
I spent so much time looking for them, and then one day, just outside the office, we were discussing the flights coming in and the guests coming in, and just stepped out of the office in Maremi, and above the office was Pels fishing, and didn't even fly away. I was just sitting there the whole day.
Wonderful.
For the first Pels, that was pretty awesome. You know how it is when you see something for the first, some of those things that you see for the first time, you remember that forever. And
especially for us who spend hours and hours out here with great chances of seeing these animals, and even still the list can vary not only from birds but animals like pangolin and aardvark. Even though we're here day in and day out for the majority of our lives, we can go for months or years without seeing something.
How often have you seen a zorilla?
I have seen a zorilla probably twice, but I can't remember clearly enough. But once or twice, and yeah.
I don't think.
I didn't ever meet Leishan, but Pete and Leishan used to work for WildEarth. Mark knows them very well. I got to know Pete for a few weeks here, but very nice guy. And I wonder what he's up to this evening in Namibia.
In Namibia, yeah, the desert, the high desert of Namibia. the owl quest, I think we should call it. We're going to be on a quest for owls, and then I guess the next few days.
Sorry, Mark, I've just got a question coming through there. Alex, sorry, could you go again with that, folks? It's surprisingly difficult. Mark had it last
Alex
week
is talking
with the earpiece, and now I do.
Okay, well, I'll just carry on then. I've visited some very nice areas today, and what we've actually done with the vehicles now, Alex was, is we were able to probably map the way we moved the vehicles around the property, and then get an idea of signal. I'm not too sure how it's going to work, but for the rest of the time that we're here, for the whole of January, I'm hoping we can get to see a lot more of where we were today, because there's some really pretty areas, and of course it's always different. It's always nicer to see things we haven't been able to see there. And I think, although it doesn't really come across that well on camera, being able to see the difference between one area and another, because the angle of view isn't that great, but I think that the vistas will be enough to be able to appreciate that we're going to be in a new area, and we're going to try and find you some different things. I know that Peter and Hayden were going through some of those areas before, because Viam was telling me that he had driven some of those roads with the guys before, and now that we've got Jigger back, I think we're going to be concentrating on spending more time there, so that we can alternate between being over there and then being here with the other vehicle with Jigger at the same time.
Yeah, it does make such a difference. And myself and Brian were just saying out on drive this afternoon, what a breath of fresh air it is, to have those moments of alone time, to be able to stop and listen. We don't have that same pressure as we do feel that we have when we are permanently live. So,
but also just increasing the chances of us
100%
having stuff on the camera.
100%.
I know there was a time this afternoon, as Alex was going to be cutting to you, and I think you were anticipating it, I suddenly chanced upon all of those nyala. There was a bunch of nyala, male and female bulls, and there was a big waterbuck bull, a lot of impala, all in one little scene on a little sort of short grass area. And oh, there's the hippo behind us at the dam. It just seemed right that we just stayed with that, because that's how we want to do it. And I suppose the aim is that as soon as we find something, I don't know if you know it, but we sat with a black-bellied koran, and we almost filled the whole screen. Well, Viam did, just with his head when he pulled in his neck and he did his
really?
Because he was...
I didn't hear about that, sadly.
8 feet away from Viam, I don't know, maybe 8, 10, not even 10 feet away.
Okay, cool.
On the termite mound, and he was quite happy to just park there and do his neck-pulling thing.
Okay, good.
I don't know how to do it, but it...
Okay, well, we do have another question, Mark,
okay.
And it's from Susan in the Netherlands. Good evening, Susan. And Susan has asked a question relative to what happened this morning. And for those of you that don't know, folks, just to recap briefly, Mark was with the leopard this morning, and sadly, one of her cubs was killed by a hyena. And now Susan's question, and maybe Mark can answer this, is whether, let's take Karula to make an exact change of scenarios. If Karula came across a hyena den and there were no adults, or the situation presented it, would she kill the cubs, the hyena cubs?
That is, I guess that's a question out of the blue. Would never have thought of that, because it's actually a very good question. Susan, wow. I'll have to sort of start the same way as I start all the time. It depends. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. It's all about animal behavior, and just to I try and get this point across as much as I can, is that where one leopard will do something, another leopard won't.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't really say what one leopard would do, because there's every possibility. If you could think of every scenario of what a leopard would do, yes, there's the scenario that it would kill the cubs. Yes, there's the scenario that it would move away from them. There's every scenario that you can think of, which will be actually an acting working scenario, because a leopard would be different.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose maybe some leopards would be vindictive enough, or they might be that compelled enough to kill the cubs of the hyena.
To simplify the question, let me put it to you like this. If Karula came across hyena cubs and there was no adult there trying to defend it, so she had an easy opportunity to kill the cub. Would you put your money on her killing it or walking past and leaving it? You've got two options.
No, don't. She'd probably kill it.
Yeah. So,
she probably wouldn't hesitate.
but like Mark says, you don't actually know what would happen. So
no, I mean, it could be that she leaves it.
But yeah, in general, I
think the odds on a hyena doing it to the leopard are a lot higher. Not to sound frivolous or not to be jocular about it, but yes, the odds of the hyena being that intent on killing another youngsters is probably stronger than the leopard. And the leopard might not want to even chance an encounter, and it might actually just leave it alone.
Yeah, that's a good point. That she wouldn't take the risk of an adult coming to defend its cub.
You see, hyena don't really. They're resilient. They're strong. They're resilient, and yeah, they might get a few scratches like they did today from Karula. There was one that got a good hiding from her. We didn't see it happen. I think we sort of saw it happen, but it looked like it happened so fast. But I know that in the blink of the eye that it did happen. I know that those claws and those teeth were out, and I know that she inflicted damage because she wasn't warning, she was defending, and she probably raked that hyena something good, but it was just too much for her, I think. The two of them.
In all your years, Mark, in the bush, have you ever seen any predator kill a hyena cub? Because I know I haven't. I mean, obviously it could well have happened, but I haven't personally ever seen a leopard or lion kill a hyena cub, where it has often been the other way around, where I've seen or known for a fact that hyena have killed leopards. So like Mark says, there may be a stronger likelihood of hyena doing that.
We got termites coming in. If I hold my hand out long enough, I'll get one landing. Come to me, children. No, Scott, I haven't seen any intraspecific predation like that of hyena cubs being killed by anything. But I think that isn't a fair enough answer because I haven't really seen that many. I haven't been able to observe dens over a consistent amount of time to be able to quantify that answer with any data, because I've only ever visited dens briefly wherever I've been. I've moved around Africa so much in my past that I've never really spent that much time with the same clan that I have spent actually here at Djuma.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I have with lion and I have with other animals in other parts of Africa, but not with hyena, unfortunately, because then they're not that easy to get that close to, and they will come close to us. They'll chew on our tires and they'll tease us if we're sitting at the den and all, but they're not that easy to track down once they've moved the den, because I'm sure they've moved the den.
Yeah.
We went past there today, and if they'd been there would be muddy footprints all over the place, and it's not. And if I remember correctly, a few years ago, when we had the heavy rains, it was pretty much the same thing. By the time the heavy rains came, they'd moved in. I just got to think, there was that den just above Gowrie Dam that they moved. We just need to go and visit some of the old den sites. I need to point some of them out to you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
There's of course that one up on the northeast, or rather the southeastern corner.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Sort of that mini loop on the inside of Leadwood Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful.
It is a
beautiful
lovely
setting
den,
for a den. That.
But also probably a little bit too risky because it's in a drainage line.
Yeah.
And the one that is high above anything is the one just above Gowrie Dam, which is right close to where, in the middle of the day, Karula got nailed today.
Okay.
So it might be worth having a look at that den.
Okay.
You know, when you go up Boober Road.
Yeah.
And you get that little track that turns down to like room 5 to 8 of the. At that junction, but on the northern side of that junction, there's a big termite mound in there that used to be a den site.
Okay, well that's definitely worth checking out.
So we need to look at that. And of course it'll be easy because we've had this rain, and after the rain we've had a lot of the moisture has retained, the soil has retained the moisture, and so the footprints would be embedded in the mud around the clay of the termite mound, so we would be able to see whether they are
Okay, well,
recent.
Mark, we have got another question that's come through. Sadly, I didn't copy who it was from, but I'll go ahead with the question. And it was somebody who was watching this afternoon, and from Ryan. Good evening, Ryan, and welcome to the Fireside Chats. Ryan is asking, I mentioned that termites... Did you catch it?
No.
I thought you had it there.
No.
But these termites, reproductive termites, also known more commonly as flying ants,
Yes.
are highly nutritious, and I did mention that humans in different tribes and even us can eat them.
Yeah.
And they are edible. And somebody asked, what insects have you eaten, Mark? Because I mentioned that I had snacked on one or two of these in my youth. Are there any funny insects that you can think of snacking on?
Well, I have eaten. I've been in the Zambezi Valley, where just holding a frying pan over the fire and with the light, they just flocked into the flying the flying pan. I tried them raw, but I think you've got to empty the stomach contents. I'm not going to do anything to this. It's just what I was waiting for was it shedding its wings. It's just shed its wings, and now it's going to find, here's a piece of wood. I won't do anything to a termite. These are very important creatures. In fact, the health of an environment, the health of a habitat is determined by the termite population and the colonies of termites, because of how they recycle the trace elements of the soil. All of this can be, like this big piece of marula, fungi, and that will break it down, but the cellulose, the only thing that will break that down is the gut of the termite.
Yeah.
So it might offer a little bit of nutrients to the soil, but nothing as much as what the termite can offer. But yeah, I've eaten
the Mopani worm.
I tried the Mopani worm. I have a lot of them growing. Well, I live in Mopani-veld.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me that I have people coming to harvest Mopani worms around my Mopani trees. My house is called Mopani Grove.
Oh, really?
Because of the Mopanis. And I like to have the Mopani worms there, because with the Mopanis, with them in the trees, I don't get elephants. And while that might sound odd, it actually works in my favor, because when ellies come around, they break my Mopani trees, and they take away my shade, and they eat my aloes. And I love them visiting my home, and I love the elephants that I live with, but just leave my garden alone.
And have you noticed that the Mopani worms definitely cause the elephants to be less likely to feed on them or break them down?
Well, because they can be so numerous and they're chewing on the tree, that the tree is already in its defense mode. So
okay.
Elephants are less like it, in my opinion, and just in history. But in any case, the elephants mostly use the Mopani in winter when they're getting the best nutrition out of it.
Yep.
There's not really much point in feeding on Mopani now, because although it's very high in protein, and there's studies that have been done that it's sort of one of the highest protein producing plants, for that kind of protein for elephants.
Okay.
It's still, there's so many other things that are far more nutritious now because it's the wet season. But if you know about Mopani stays green well into the dry season. In fact, way in past even the winter solstice, we've still got green Mopani. So that's sort of more or less when elephants are utilizing it, and that's more for roughage than anything else. It's flushing the system with the Mopani.
But thanks, Ryan. Thank you for that question. There aren't too many insects that come to my mind other than these.
Well, they're grasshoppers. I've never tried them.
Mopani worm.
Grasshoppers and chocolate-coated cockroaches.
Yeah, I mean, I know in some countries scorpions and
I've had
all
prawns.
sorts. Fresh land prawns.
No, you mean park-time prawns?
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about like Mozambique tiger prawns.
Okay, yes.
And langoustine. Aren't they the same thing as
similar,
creepy crawlies?
They are.
So if we can eat them, why can't we eat these creepy crawlies?
For sure. Got another question coming through, sorry.
Well, crickets, in fact, the protein level that you find in an insect is actually very highly nutritious, and I guess it's one thing that can save starving nations, is breeding insects on such a high scale, because we're just so famous at breeding animals on such a high scale, and using the protein as a protein supplement in the diet of our domestic and farmed animals.
Okay, well, ready for the next question, and it's from somebody in South Africa. It could be somebody that knows myself or Mark, I'm not too sure, but it's somebody by the name of David. Good evening, David, and welcome. David is apparently interested in becoming a field guide or a game ranger, two different terms for the same job, and there are many different avenues you can go down in order to become a field guide or game ranger, Dave. Basically, the most likely way of doing it and the easiest way of doing it is to apply with one of numerous different safari training companies. There's a long list, and if you put any bush training academy into Google, you'll get a lot of different names coming up there with the different companies that do training, and it varies between doing a 1-month course, 6-month course, 1-year course. So that is one way of going about it, and probably in this day and age the best way to go about it is to get your initial qualifications and then approach a lodge once you are qualified, and then that lodge will take you on, knowing that you're inexperienced, but you've got all the training and necessary qualifications. Yeah. But I'm not sure how old you are, David, but it is an avenue definitely worth pursuing, especially if you are younger. But if you're not younger and you're a bit older, that's also fine.
But look at me, I mean, gee.
Yes, but as starting out. But
Okay,
I know many
starting
people, as I'm sure you do, that have quit office jobs.
I want, but not even that. I mean, it doesn't have to be for people, just to sort of sideline that, because I know so many people who are so interested in the bush and they love the bush so much. They come from the city, they tend to visit the bush, whether it's periodically or often is irrelevant, but they visit the bush, and invariably are visiting the bush on their own and driving themselves, and they don't have the benefit of a guide to take them around. So many of them do these courses just to learn stuff about the bush, because these courses they're quite comprehensive, they are quite compact, they're quite condensed, and they're able to teach you a lot in a short amount of time. But yes, I think when you look at that, if you take a 10-day course versus a 1-month or a 3-month or one of those internships where you spend a whole year doing the whole thing, obviously the longer you're at it, the more intensive the training, the more intensive the information that you're going to be achieving, and probably the harder it'll become. But if that's what you want, that would be the way to go. I always regret not taking an academic route to some degree, going to get a nature conservation diploma or something. And I think for anybody who's in their youth now that can't really afford to just try and jump into something, if you've got the time to extend your studies, to do something like a BSc in zoology or botany or ecology or environmental management, or to do a nature conservation diploma that doubles as a game lodge management diploma, something like that, something that is solid, because especially for us South Africans, we are so limited to where we can go nowadays. I was very lucky. When I started in this industry, South Africa was only starting, and it was only after South Africa's safari industry started that Southern Africa started coming on board. I know Kenya and East Africa have obviously had their safari industry going for a long time, and that's why it's kind of hard to break into the Kenyan side of it. You and I have both been there. Tanzania was a lot easier, because Tanzania only opened up to the rest of the world after Nyerere and towards the sort of mid to late 90s. I was lucky to be part of that. But nowadays, if your heart is in Africa, if your heart is in the bush, there might be places where you'll find an easy job based on minimal qualifications. But if you've got something tertiary, and you've got something with a certificate, you've got something that's substantial, you can go to any country, and sometimes, well, for me at least, my drive was being in some of the biggest and wildest and remotest places that I could find myself, which was in East Africa and Zambia and places like that. I'm sure there are people out there, and there's no better way to do that than to have a solid academic background, that you can actually get involved in the nature side of it, the conservation side of it, as opposed to the tourist side of it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a very big difference. There's there are two ways of looking at a job or a life here in the bush. Either you're in it in the tourism industry and you're entertaining people and you've got to learn management of camps and management of lodges, which is essentially a hotel type of thing. Or you want to be on the conservation side of things, in which case you take a step back from the social world and you become more dedicated to the wildlife that you're involved in, and your life is about living in the bush. But that these days needs academic. The other side, the social side, the game lodges and the tourism side, you might get away with basic qualifications and especially just a hotel diploma or something. But the better you can present yourself on a piece of paper, the better you can position yourself out there from anything, from remote island lodges to remote bush camps and luxury camps anywhere in Africa. And without anything serious, you're not going to get that far just with a Fagasa qualification or a field guides level 1 or 2. And there's going to be a lot of time that needs to be put into it. Nowadays you need to actually spend a lot of time at each level before you can sort of rise up to the next. But sometimes if your heart's really in it, you need to really see some parts of Africa that are now becoming so fussy or so critical in the type of people that they hire for those places, because they have to give them work permits and they have to give them residence permits and things.
Yeah.
And all of that hinges on the amount of education that person has to transfer or to teach the people that are going to be taking over from them in those countries. And I mean, that was one of the things that I was subject to when I lived in Tanzania and Kenya and Zambia, was I had to train the guys. Well, not had to, but it was part and parcel of the whole thing, and that was why I loved it so much, was because I was bringing something to the table that they wouldn't ordinarily have without me and my background.
Yeah. We are very fortunate here in South Africa at the level of guiding and standards of guiding relative to other African countries. So we are. I think sometimes we get a little bit too over the top with our and we expect a little bit too much. But yeah,
you only have to guide in other countries further north from here and see how a lack of rules entirely impacts on the environment and impacts on the animal's behavior, that it becomes a pleasure to be back in a place sometimes back in a place like this, where there are rules about how many vehicles can be at a sighting and how guides behave with their sightings. It is starting to occur. I mean, Kenya has its own guiding principle, very much the same as we have in South Africa. We have our government levels of qualifications, what we call the NQF qualifications, and then there's the Fagasa, which falls under the government the government requirements to operate as a guide. So the KPSGA, the Kenya Professional Safari Guides Association, is very similar to what we have here as Fagasa. I'd say they're a little bit more strict, and certainly in Zimbabwe, they I don't know if you know about the guiding principles.
Yeah, incredible there.
Zimbabwe, you've got to do a lot of stuff before you can become a guide. And it would be nice to actually see those qualities or those guidelines and those rules, for want of a better word, extend to more countries.
For sure.
It's hard sometimes to be able to see how some people do behave in wildlife.
Okay, well, we do have another question that's come through. I believe it's Kayston in Kansas. And good evening, Kayston.
I need water. I'm going to use some of yours.
Help yourself. Kayston is asking how exciting it is, obviously, to when we do come across animals that we don't see often. And a story comes to mind quickly for me, so I'm going to answer that. And basically, we were on the way home from Djuma to the Manyeleti, where we stay every night, about a week and a half ago, possibly 2 weeks ago, and we spotted an aardvark, which is an incredibly rare nocturnal animal. I think, Brian, it was your first one. You had obviously seen in the Kalahari, but it was somebody on the vehicle's first time, I think.
Might have been, well, Alex also saw his first honey badgers.
Okay.
As well, under the same circumstances.
But it's very exciting seeing these rare animals that we don't often see. But one thing, and not to be negative, one thing that makes it's obviously there's an initial overwhelming feeling of joy that you are seeing this animal that you haven't got to see before, but sadly, because we don't get to see a lot of these more rare animals, when we do see them, it's a fleeting glimpse. So we don't get to see their behavior and get to understand them too much as an animal, which is what we do get spoiled with animals like leopard and lion and elephant here that have become habituated to the vehicles. You get to live amongst them almost with the animals unknowing, almost as if they don't care or know that you're even there. Whereas with these more rare animals like aardvark or pangolin, if you find them, they tend to either run away or the pangolin curl up in a ball. So it can be hard to really appreciate an animal unless you get to see it acting naturally.
It's funny you should say that, you know, because I've had people that have experienced the difference between a place like Kruger, where you've got to stop for impala, where the animals are so blasé, I suppose, in some ways about the vehicles because they know that there's nothing going to happen, that nothing's going to happen, as opposed to places like when I first got to Selous, where animals all used to run away. And there would be people that had been to places like Serengeti, where animals are like here. They're very, very relaxed with the vehicles. They're habituated. And suddenly being in a place like Selous or parts of East Africa where at the slightest movement, even here at Salati Game Reserve, it's the same thing. Zebra and wildebeest, they see the vehicle, they run. And that is because there just aren't that many vehicles that have driven around to make them relaxed. They're still not really sure about human beings because these places are so wild. And the reaction of people that have said things like, it's so nice to see animals running away, and I'm thinking, but that's not the point. Yes, it's nice to see the animals running, but they're running away from us. They're afraid of us. We've impacted on their lives, and as opposed to watching animals like here in Kruger and around here, where you can stop with impala, you can stop with these animals and sit with them, and they engage in their natural behavior. They eat, they do whatever they do without being influenced by the presence of the vehicle. So I think it's all a matter of perspective, but I think just the reality of it is that how do you ever know an animal unless you're actually seeing it behave in such a way that your presence is not changing its behavior. And I just hope that most of the time when we find animals and we leave them again, we leave them in such a state that they aren't impacted by our presence, that we're able to watch them, we're able to spend time with them, and we're able to move along having witnessed part of their lives that we might never be able to any other way. And by leaving them doesn't change their lives, that we haven't impacted on their lives at all. I think that's sort of the be-all and end-all of what we're trying to do, is to observe things but not be an influence. And we can't always get that right, unfortunately. I mean, there are animals that will move away from the vehicles, there are animals that will react to the vehicles, but we can only hope that when we leave them, that we leave them with a positive experience.
Yeah. But thank you very much for that question, and hopefully sometime soon on one of our drives we will come across one of these more rare animals that we don't get to see often, or a zorilla for Mark, because he has yet to see one, and then you'll see what it's like. You'll see firsthand what it's like to see an animal that we haven't seen for a long time.
Did you ever see Gerenuk?
Sorry, one more question. You carry on.
No, that's fine. I was
sorry.
And it's hard. I go mad if I've got Alex talking in my ear and somebody trying to talk to me in the other ear. So I understand that. But I'm going to ask Scott now, because he spent time in Kenya too. But there's an antelope up there that looks like a stretched out impala. It's called the Gerenuk, and it's got an exceptionally long neck. It's not related to the giraffe, and they have this habit of even standing on their hind legs to reach very high vegetation. So it's just another way of, I suppose, of nature modifying an animal to adjust to different conditions and to maybe exploit a niche that is as yet unexploited. And so maybe every generation the neck extends a fraction of a degree that actually helps that animal survive better in a very dry season, because it's able to reach that little bit higher, and so it carries the gene for a slightly longer neck, and that just perpetuates until the neck gets really, really long. Kind of the way things work. and they are very long, and they've got these tiny little heads, because obviously as the neck gets longer, with a heavier head needs more muscle, while elephants with such big fat heads have got such short fat necks because they've got to carry such a big head. So they were probably invented first, and nature thought, well, hang on, maybe not first, but nature must have thought, well, why not just give it a long neck and a small head instead of a small neck and a big head. And Gerenok's going the same way. Did you see any Gerenok?
Yes, I did. Up in northern Kenya, I saw quite a few there.
Yeah, only really.
Samburu.
Although there were Chulu.
Yes, they were in the Chulus.
There was that sort of acacia felt.
Yeah.
After you went past the airstrip, and anyways, yeah, amazing antelope.
Yeah, they are beautiful antelope. And that was the first place I saw a lot of large antelopes in East Africa. You get
the gazelle.
Yeah, a lot of different antelopes and gazelle, the Thompson's gazelles, grants.
They were always on the airstrip there.
Yeah.
We found out that we actually were at the same place in the Chulu Hills in southeastern Kenya.
Yeah, working at exactly the same lodge, you would have thought, just a few years apart. Beautiful, beautiful part of Kenya, that.
Yeah, probably one of the most amazing. It was one of the youngest lava flows, in fact. It's an area of a lot of old volcanic activity, so there were a lot of calderas, a lot of... If you were a child and you were drawing sort of hills, you'd sort of draw these round hills and more round hills in the background, and the Chulu Hills in the southeastern part of Kenya, just near Amboseli, look exactly like that. And a lot of those are calderas and old volcanic craters, and some of the youngest lava flows on the planet, where maybe 200 or so years ago lava flowed out onto the plains, and some of the last black rhino, certainly northern black rhino, lived there.
Yeah. Sorry, Alex, could you please go again with that question? I didn't hear it the first time around.
Oh.
And when I hold my finger on my ear, it means send the question again.
Body language. We've got to do it too. We don't have tails. There was also the first time we saw things like bat-eared fox, because we don't have them here.
Yeah, those are awesome animals,
yeah.
The bat-eared fox. Now, a question's just come through from Rini. Good evening, Rini, and welcome to the fire. Rini's asking, have we ever seen animals in an area that they are not supposed to occur? Now, I'm trying to jog my memory, and I can't think of any.
Well, Nyala.
Okay.
I don't think Nyala is supposed to occur here. I think Nyala were all brought here. I think quarantine, well, not here as in Djuma, but in the Eastern Transvaal. I mean, all along the rivers and dry river beds, even where I am in the Timbavati, where we've just got the Mtsiri River, which only flows after a severe flood, we've got Nyala.
Okay.
Whereas we didn't have 20 to 30 years ago. And to my knowledge, Nyala sort of were brought up here from Natal, because
okay.
in all my childhood there were always bushbuck, and now you don't find bushbuck, you mostly find Nyala. Although there's still some bushbuck here at the camp.
Yeah, hanging on.
Fortunately, you're just hanging on. But there are a lot of places where Nyala have displaced them.
But no, sadly, I can't think of any major, seeing I can't think of any examples, but I've never been surprised by seeing an animal in an area where it shouldn't be, but it obviously can happen.
Are we talking about aliens or just animals in habitat that don't
I think
belong?
we can open the bracket to aliens this evening. But
okay. I mean, we can always talk about cheetah that we would always find in sort of open grassland habitat that I've seen in very thick bush.
Yeah.
But so it's unusual to see them in that habitat, but that's in itself not unusual. Things happen like that.
Yeah.
But if we look at the spread of the myna bird and the house crow, all the way down to Cape Town now, even in Hoedspruit now we've got the mynas.
They're even at Manyeleti camp, I've seen the pair flying around. Yeah.
Well, that's disastrous if they are there, because they're going to they just have this habit of killing indigenous species chicks and tearing up the nest.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, yes. We don't have the problems like cane toad in Australia and the hares in Australia, or zebra mussels on the east coast of the US, I think it is. The transfer of species or inadvertently even by man, whether it's on purpose or not, where they proliferated. We're only talking animals here.
Animals and aliens, I think, like you said, we've got aliens open to that.
Or are we talking about
extraterrestrial
like
beings count?
plants too?
I think it was just animals. But Alex, let's try and squeeze in one more question before the end. We've only got a few more minutes, folks. It goes quickly. It does go quickly.
But we only just sat down. New Year's Eve, folks, we jovial. It's celebration. Who was that song? Celebration time. Come on. 10cc.
I don't have a clue, Mark.
Before your time. Scott.
Okay, this is a question for Mark, and it's from Jeffrey.
Jeffrey in Texas.
I think it was Jeffrey in Texas. And
Austin, I think.
Jeffrey was asking, with all the years that you've been spending with elephants, different herds of elephants, different individual elephants, do you feel that any individuals potentially know you individually by your voice or your smell or any way, which way, but do you think there are some elephant that have come to know you on a personal level?
Well, yes, I do. But then that's what I think. But whether they do or not it's up to the elephant to know.
Yeah.
But yes, there were definitely elephant bulls that I lived with in East Africa, in Selous. They were permanently in camp. There were a couple of elephant bulls in the Okavango when I ran a camp in the Okavango that were 24-hour-day bulls in camp. And they definitely got to know my voice. They got to know me. They knew how I would behave, and I knew how they would behave to a degree.
Yep.
But I was always having to jump in front of a guest trying to put a camera up their trunk, because guests thought that because there's an elephant in camp, it's a tame elephant. Meanwhile, it's a wild bull elephant who just happens to be there because, well, he likes the company, but also because there were other things. You know, the fact that they camp and there's people meant that other animals like the primates, baboons and things didn't come through camp, and a lot of other animals didn't come through camp, so there was a lot more available to the elephants that was not available outside camp. In particular, things like the doom fruits, the doom palm fruits, and certain things that would be grazed and browsed by animals that ordinarily would do so outside camp, but they weren't coming into camp for no other reason other than there was people moving around. And these elephant bulls felt nothing for us people moving around. After all, we had just set up a camp where they'd been feeding for the last 20 or 30 years. So it was more their place than ours, and they just tolerated our presence. And I'm talking about sort of semi-permanent tented camps in East Africa and in Botswana and in Zambia. And at home, I know, at home there's certain elephant bulls that come around. Whether I might be biased, you know, I talk to them and they react to my voice. It might be my imagination, it might be my interpretation of their movement that makes it look like they're reacting to my voice. I've stopped a lot of elephants rushing at my landy just by talking to them.
Yep.
I've got that a lot on video too. But by the same token, they didn't have any ill intent to begin with.
Yeah.
But it certainly calmed them down when they knew who I was. I hope. But there are a lot of elephants that over time in different places that I've lived, there are elephants that I've seen regularly over lengths of time, that as long as my behavior is consistent, they know where I'm coming from when I'm in their presence.
Yeah.
So they react to me in the same way, and they know that certain things that they do I won't react to, like the foot stomping and kicking sand in my face and ears. That doesn't work anymore, dude. You've been through that. Get over it.
Yeah. It would be so interesting to know, though, and like you say, there is no way of ever knowing whether they do.
Well, there were a few incidents. I mean, I've had a few incidents with a particular bull that I know is Joseph, and I found, funnily enough, a lot of photographs of him because I've spoken about him over the years, and just this year I managed to get all my books and all my stuff up from the Cape that had been down there in storage, and amongst that were a number of photographs, albeit sort of flood damaged around the edges from the 98 floods that we had in Tanzania. It made these floods here 2 years ago look like nothing at all. But maybe I'll be able to sort of copy them and put them on. But he was an elephant that he almost would listen to me. And there were many occasions that I had to move him because he was in the way of things, or he was imposing on guests, and he needed, and I would say, Joseph, come on, and he would follow me.
Really?
Yeah. And we had a swimming pool. It was one of this is in the Selous Game Reserve.
Just to let you know, sorry to interrupt.
No, well, we'll just go over 1 minute. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the story now.
No, carry on with the
viewers saying,
carry on with the Selous.
No, sorry, folks, we got to go. Next Fireside Chat, we'll catch up next year. Okay, quick one. We had it was just one of those holes dug in the ground with a sort of vinyl lined metal frame as the swimming pool, and it had a shade cover cloth. But to keep the elephant in it, I think I'm hearing an elephant. To keep the elephant and the hippo out, we had this pole fence that was made out of Terminalia poles, because up there you get the Terminalia spinosa. It's like leadwood. It's hard and it's solid. And those poles were about this high off the ground, so that smaller things could move through, but the elephants couldn't come in towards the pool. And so people would feel safe being inside, especially when Joseph or Frank or Alfred or whoever the elephants were at the time. But one day, Joseph got into the pool area because there were doom palms hanging over it that would drop their fruits. Nothing else could get to those fruits, but he was tall enough and big enough that he could actually lift his legs over the poles. And there was kind of like this entrance for humans to get in that was very, very narrow, but it was almost like a V. It wasn't a straight entrance, you had to go in as a V. And Joseph was inside the pool area. There were actually people in the swimming pool. And I had to get Joseph out of the pool area because people were moving around. And it was all caught on video, and I wish I could have that video. But I walked in there and I said, Joseph, it's enough now, come with me. And I led him through this little stile where it's sort of a zigzag to get out. And the right side, I can't remember, it was like right or left side legs would go through that, but he would sort of like a hurdle, he would lift his leg over the other poles and then get the leg through that area. And he followed me out and stood outside that area and let the people go through the other way and get off to lunch. It was, so there have been times. And I think it just comes with familiarity because we're in the same space. I never went back to any of these places to find out if they remembered me, and sadly Joseph and all his mates met a really harsh end to poachers in Selous, because that's what Selous is. And I have to live with the fact that these are elephants that I kind of habituated or got used to humans, and they were probably some of the first elephants to be poached in the newest wave of poaching. So it's hard to, it's sometimes best, you've got to just stay detached. As much as you love the bush and as much as one loves the animals, the more you love it, the harder it is to let go of it when things like that happen. So sometimes it's just better to stay somewhat detached and have that understanding that you can love it, but don't hold it so close to the heart.
Yeah, that is a good point. Well, folks, that is a wrap. We went over a few minutes so Mark could finish off his story, and I'm glad he did, and I'm glad we're still here. But from myself and the rest of the team who are actually going to come through, just so you can see their faces quickly, from Brian and Jason and VM, they'd just
This
like
my
to come
son-
and
this my-
show
my-
their
my
face
adopted
quickly.
son, Jason.
How's it, VM?
What's up?
I think Brian, is Brian coming?
VM.
Yes, he
Yeah,
is.
Brian's
He's going to abandon the camera
Disconnecting
temporarily.
from all the
Cameraman
wires.
And
today.
we all just squeeze onto the log to wish all of you
Happy New Year. So we're going to do this like a
Happy
1,
New
2, 3 thing.
Year. we might have to do a 1, 2, 3 Happy New Year. So
Yeah.
Should we? Any of you know the duck dance? It's not going to happen.
Oh, damn.
yeah. Sadly, the best dancer amongst us is in the control room at the moment. That's Alex. The rest of us are no good. Alex, it's a pity you're not up here with us. And so for everyone that is watching, there is one person missing, and that is Alex. But he needs to be in the control right now. But from the rest of us...
Yeah, but I think we'll get Alex in front of the camera again soon.
Exactly.
Yes. Behind the wheel, Alex needs to do a drive. He's been stuck in control room a little bit too long. So, from me...
Me.
Me. Happy
New
New Year.
Guys, this is a proper on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Happy New
Year's!
Year's!
Okay. And we hope you have a wonderful evening or morning or whatever time of day it is over there.
We'll see you in the morning.
Yes, we will see you in the
out.
morning.
We'll see you
we will
next
be
year.
out. So until the morning, all the best, and we'll see you next time.
We're going to be out there so all the animals can come and wish us happy birthday.
Exactly.
I mean, happy New Year. Because they're all going to be rejoicing.
They will be.
Yes.
They will be. And so will we, I'm sure, with whatever we're looking at.
I hope so. A new year and a new slate.
Yeah. New Year with one more month out here.
Yeah.
What a great
It'll be
way
good.
to start. We do.
Yes. Well done.